Sitaram, and a pleasant good morning to all of our viewers and listeners, and welcome to another edition of the program Addiction and Recovery. It's a wonderful Thursday morning here in Trinidad and Tobago. So, without further ado, let me introduce the host of the program Addiction and Recovery, Mr. Ramners Dwarka. Sitaram, sir.
I'm Jason, and thank you for having me in the program again. Let me join with you in welcoming all our listeners, both in Trinidad and Tobago, and on social media, wherever the program is heard and carried. I want to remind our listeners as well that this program is repeated again on the same station, television and radio, at 10 p.m. tonight, so that you can, if you don't have the time to follow the program now, you may be able to join and listen to it at your convenience. The program is also posted on YouTube and on Facebook. And of course, it is a very valuable resource to my mind. And I know that people are referring their loved ones and persons that they are concerned with to the YouTube program so that they can look at it. And on that platform, you will be able to see various aspects of the whole issues that are involved in substance abuse and drug addiction, from identifying whether you have a drug problem to the resources available, also to the whole question of what are some of the challenges. And on the last occasion, and there are many others, and the various treatment modalities. On the last occasion, we spoke about how to select an appropriate treatment program. I also went into some of the details as to what are some of the concerns you will have, some of what the considerations you need to apply when selecting a program that might be unique and addressed to your particular needs or the needs of someone that you're concerned with. And basically, we looked at the program that exists at Cora Hospital. That is a substance abuse prevention and treatment center. I also am aware I have worked in close collaboration with the other treatment houses in Trinidad that are at present. I am aware of the program to some extent of what happens at New Life Ministries at Mount St. Benedict. I was at one time involved in training some of the staff there in the use of acupuncture in the treatment of drug addiction. And I have spoken about the benefits of using acupuncture in the treatment of drug addiction. And I know that at the New Life Ministry, they still continue to offer that. And I believe it is also offered at their Southern treatment facility for women in Santa Flora. So let me just speak a little bit about acupuncture, although I think I have a whole program that was dedicated to that sometime earlier on. But common sense will tell us that, you can't use drugs to treat drug addiction. Very often people do that and find that what they're doing is substituting one for the other. And you can end up with a bigger problem. But before I go further, I want to thank the staff at the television station for selecting the videos that preceded this program this morning. They were very valuable information on the essential steps to recovery and the 12-step program as is offered by Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to say that the team there is doing a fantastic job in resourcing the material to present to all our listeners. Coming back to the use of acupuncture in drug addiction, I know it was mentioned in the lead up to this program that there are many times you find in that cohort of patients that are suffering with drug addiction that there's what is called comorbidity, that very often they are suffering with mental health issues, maybe depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues. And yes, in Trinidad, our first line of approach to dealing with it is to go to see our doctor. And I would recommend that. But as I say that, I also must caution that, a person presenting, for instance, a person who has been using alcohol for a very long time, when they stop or they are trying to stop, naturally they are going to suffer with withdrawal symptoms, one of which is insomnia, that is the inability to sleep. And if you went to your general practitioner or your doctor and you told them, look, you are having trouble to sleep, they are going to prescribe a sedative, you know, and sedatives, there are various brand names and so on, but they all, what they do, they help you to sleep. Okay. But alcohol, for instance, is a sedative in its own self. So what you've basically been doing is you are transferring from a liquid sedative to a solid sedative, which is a pill, which does this very same thing. And it is these little pills that look very innocent, they're very, very powerful. That little blue pill or that white little pill there that you take it will, especially in the beginning, before you have developed tolerance for those things. And as I say that, people who are using alcohol for a very long time will find that they have to use heavier doses than the average person to be able to sleep, because they have developed tolerance for sedatives, whether it be alcohol or whether it be prescription pills. And so what happens is they just substituting. And I have seen so many people who struggle. They come to AA, they come to counseling, but they are on these sedatives that we have prescribed, and now they have become dependent on the pills, and they can't seem to get off it. And very often, when the pill is not doing the job, when they have developed tolerance for the 5 milligram or the 10 milligram, being people in recovery, being alcoholics as they were, they have a tendency now to supplement it with alcohol. And I have been seeing quite a number of cases where people, young people who started probably initially using alcohol recreationally, then becoming dependent on the alcohol. But when they're trying to stop, they go into withdrawal, they go to the doctor, they get put on psychotropic drugs, that is sedatives and so on. And so now they're using it in conjunction. When the pill is not putting them to sleep, they've gone back to drinking alcohol and taking pills. And that is a very, very serious situation, because the people who developed the pills, when they were doing the testing, they never tested it on people who were inebriated, people who were drunk. They use it on normal people. So their prescription will be based on their test using it with normal individuals. So the average person, for instance, they know it would probably 5 milligrams of a sedative would put them to sleep. And they would suggest that to their practitioners. The doctors and so on will probably start with that. But a person who has been using alcohol and drugs for a long time will find that 5 milligrams is still not doing it. They're still experiencing the withdrawal symptoms and they're having difficulty to sleep. And so they themselves sometimes go and take more, because it's common sense. If one tablet is putting you to sleep for an hour, maybe two will put you to sleep for a longer time. Now, the danger in that is that when you combine drugs, when you combine alcohol or illicit drugs with prescription pills, you can do serious harm, or you can actually, this could become fatal. You know, it may not only put you to sleep, but it can also put your heart to sleep as well. So that it is very difficult and it is dangerous to be using prescription pills alongside drug addiction. And this is why acupuncture has been found to be a more safe method, because you cannot overdose on acupuncture. There is no negative effects associated with acupuncture, especially, well, that is when it is done by a person who is trained in acupuncture. For the protocol, for treatment protocol for alcoholism and drug addiction, there's a specific treatment in acupuncture that is recommended, and it is now being used very widely. In fact, where I did my training in New York at the Bronx Hospital, the Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, it was used that it had been used in there, and it still continues to be used. It's being used in Europe, in South America, in a lot of places, because you cannot get addicted to acupuncture. It doesn't give you a high. But if you are depressed, if you are anxious, it brings you into balance. In fact, after this program, I have patients who come in to see me just for the purpose of having acupuncture. I have just before this program started, I spoke to a gentleman who has been able to stop smoking cigarettes using acupuncture, and he also extols the benefits. You know, it relieves all the withdrawal symptoms, the cravings. Now, so that acupuncture is a very useful adjunct. It is not a cure for drug addiction, but it is a very useful tool along with counseling, along with going to AA meetings, all of these things. And we are fortunate in Trinidad that we have all of these modalities available to ourselves so that anyone wishing to have further information about it, of course, you can call me after the program at the number on your screen, 671-3040. So that coming back to the whole question of on the program this morning, to the lead up of this program, a lot was said about triggers. And I think it is important for people in recovery to be able to recognize the triggers because triggers vary from person to person. There are some people who would find that if they have to go to a party or a wedding, that could become a trigger for drinking because for all the years they drank, they associated certain activities with a certain behavior, certain situations, so that initially when a person is attempting to stay sober, they will have to spend some time, listing with the help maybe of a professional to list what were your triggers. Because once you become aware of what are those things that triggered you to use the drugs, you can take evasive action. You can decide upfront, look, I don't think I'm ready to go to that party, that birthday party, or to this carnival fete. And carnival is coming up in just a short while. So maybe we'll be looking at some of those issues that are particularly related to carnival, because I know quite a number of people have relapsed over the holiday seasons, whether it be Christmas or carnival. So coming back to triggers, for different drugs, there are different triggers. Like for smoking, for instance, you would find early mornings for a lot of people is a trigger. That's the cigarette they want the most when they get up in the morning. And the reason is because the nicotine level has dropped to the lowest because while you were sleeping, the nicotine level in the body was dropping. So the first thing in the morning, a person wants to top up again. I remember in my days of smoking cigarettes as well. If I did not have one cigarette for the morning, I would have difficulty to go to sleep in the night because I'd be worried when I get up I don't have. And actually, that was one of the main reasons that I decided to give up cigarette smoking as well because I remember I had stopped drinking. It was just a short while, a few weeks after I'd stopped drinking, but I was still smoking cigarettes. And I did not have any remaining in the night, and it was late. And in my district here, I went up and down looking for a place that was open and couldn't get any cigarettes. And then found myself at a place way into Chase Village, a place of not such good repute, but I wanted to get my cigarettes. And then I asked myself, what is this happening? You know, What is the point in stopping drinking, saving your life from alcohol, only to kill yourself with cigarettes? And that is what nudged me to make the decision to use the same program, the same 12-step program of avoiding that first cigarette one day at a time. And today I'm again over 40 years since I've stopped smoking cigarettes. But I understand the cigarette is one of those most difficult things to come off for all our brothers and sisters who are listening out there and who might be, you know, considering giving up smoking. They will know how difficult it is because cigarette has a way of reinforcing its use in your mind. Every time you run out of cigarettes, that would be the time you suffered. And that is reinforced in the mind so that you don't even want to think about stopping because you remember all the suffering you went through. So that again, for cigarette smoking, there are triggers. There are people who, after they have the cup of coffee, they need to have a cigarette. There are those people who, if they have to go to the washroom, they need to have a cigarette. For alcoholics, again, going to a party, celebrating a birthday, and those are situational triggers. But then there are those people who, having used all of these drugs for a long period of time, they have now become, they are what is called self-medicating. That is, when they stop using, they suffer with insomnia, as I mentioned earlier on. They suffer with depression, they suffer with anxiety, and they now have been using it as a medicine. And especially for those people who are self-medicating with drugs, it becomes even more difficult because these would be the people, as I mentioned earlier on, who would go to the doctor and end up a lot of time using the illicit drug in conjunction with the illicit drug, with the sleeping pills. And that is dangerous for your health. It can kill you, but it makes it several times more difficult. And yes, it has been my experience looking at people going into counseling and into AA and continually relapsing because it's like you never stop. If you stop drinking alcohol and you're still taking sleeping pills, it's like you never stop drinking. And this is what will lead to your relapse eventually anyhow. Now, I'm not saying that one should not get help from a doctor and not use these prescription pills. But anyone who is prescribing, the professional prescribing this, has a responsibility to work out an exit strategy with the patient. The patient too, you who taking the prescription pill, it should be a temporary arrangement. However, a lot of times what starts off with good intention of being a temporary arrangement, if the person does not have the psychological support, the group support, the family support, if they do not have a satisfactory level of insight and motivation for recovery, then they are, it becomes very difficult. It is not impossible, but I have seen so many people relapse continually, although they're highly motivated, they want to stop. But because they're still on the prescription pills, it's like they're never really able to get clear of it. You understand? So it is very important that one recognize these triggers. Now, for those people who going to meetings and so on, you know, these triggers can be very subtle sometimes. A trigger can, a relapse, for instance, there's what you call a slip and there's what you call a relapse. A slip is okay. You drank, take a drink by mistake. Somebody poured alcohol. You did not know, or you drank a shandy, not realizing it had alcohol. And for some people, you can have a slip and still get back on board. That is especially if you do not have a chemical addiction. But for some others, just to take any percentage of alcohol could trigger a craving for more. So that a person has to be mindful. Now, one way of knowing that you are slipping is, you start liming with the same old friends again. You know, you haven't taken the drink, but you're still going with the friends and sitting down in the bar and taking a Malta. And I have seen so many people actually they're doing it so to trying to prove to themselves that they have that willpower to resist it. And family members who are unaware of this, they think that that is okay. That is proof that look, he can handle it now. And sometimes family members themselves will set up an arrangement where they're drinking and to just see if he would be tempted. And only yesterday I had to speak to a relative about that. You don't do those things because what will happen? Yes, the person will probably not drink the first time or the second time, but that leads to a kind of complacency where the person becomes, takes it for granted. And yes, when they are prepared in the early stages, they're still remembering all the bad things that happened with them. That in itself is acting as a deterrent. But later on, there will be that day when you're not in a good frame of mind, or you're dealing with some difficult situation, and you go sit down there, and you never know when you will reach for that drink, or a friend will offer you that drink, and once you take the first one, nobody will have to offer you another one. So that from the time a person starts becoming reluctant to go to meeting, and this is a message really for relatives of the person who is in recovery. Once you see they start making excuses, people say, well, look, the fellas talking about the same thing every night, or they're finding fault with some member or the group, or things like that. Once you detect a reluctance, that means that they are already heading back to a relapse. Going back and lining with the same friends and all of that because of loneliness, going back to the same places. I've seen that happening so often. You go back to them, and the same friends will tell you, well, boy, it's a good thing you stopped drinking. But after they had one or two drinks, they themselves will tell you that, man, if you take one drink or two drink, nothing is wrong with that. And it eventually leads back to the relapse. So that a person's sobriety really becomes their responsibility. You have to protect yourself. It means making certain sacrifices. It means giving up some friends. And when you really check it, were they really friends? Those fellas you used to drink with? No, because when you stop drinking, you would see if they're going on a line, they're not passing for you, and eventually they'll drop you out of their circle. And this is why it is very important for persons in recovery to find new friends, to join a group, an AA group. And now we are so fortunate. We have online AA groups where even if you don't have a car, or you don't have transport, or you live far, you don't have no group in your area, once you have internet and you have a smartphone, you can access their meetings going 24/7. Anywhere in the world you are, once you have internet and a smartphone or a laptop, you can access a meeting. And the meetings have been found to be the most successful uh, method in not only helping people to stop, but more important, helping them to stay stopped. And not only stay stopped, but to rediscover their true potential and purpose in life, as I have found out myself. It is very, very important when you stop drinking to have some support. Now, earlier before the program, we also heard about the getting involved in useful activities. And this is critical because, in school, I remember in primary school, we learned that an idle brain is the devil workshop. The worst thing can happen with a drug addict or alcoholic in recovery is to have nothing to do, to, to keep the worst company for them to keep is their own, actually. It sounds ridiculous, but meaning to have no one to talk to be by yourself. And this is why very, very early when a person goes to Alcoholics or Narcotics Anonymous, at their first meeting, it is suggested to them to get phone numbers of other members who are in recovery, members of the group, so that if you don't have someone, if you're getting an urge, like this morning, I had a guy call me and he said, look, you know, I'm feeling to pull out the vape again because he's trying to stop smoking and he's getting headache. And I was able to talk him out of it and suggest to him, look, take something sweet, have a cup of coffee or something like that, substitute the thought. There are so many ways you can get over these urges because it is really the devil trying to get you back to go back and smoke. You understand? The same thing happened with alcoholics. So for an alcoholic, once you stop, you will find you have a lot of time, drinking and drug using takes up a lot of time. And now you have to find productive use of that time. Because if you just sit down at home, especially if you are unemployed, you might have lost your job. Please, for your own good, find something to do. And that is a win-win situation. For instance, if you're staying with relatives, you stop drinking, and they notice, well, look, he's going now, look, he's mixing some soil to pot some plants, or he's cleaning the flower bed, or he's cleaning the drain, or he's cobwebbing the house. Or why never see him wash wares? Look, he's helping to wash the wares, the dishes. These are the things that really communicate to the people around you that you are willing to make that change. You're actually making a change from the person you used to be, offering to assist in the house, sitting and now spending time with relatives, reinforcing and repairing relationships that might have been damaged because of your drinking and drug use. So you can find so many ways. I remember when I was director at the Piparo Empowerment Center, we were able to get from the Ministry of Agriculture a material to set up grow boxes, and we got soil to put in them, and we got plants donated as well. And I would ask every one of the clients there to adopt a plant. Some, if you, it's your choice. If you wanted a tomato plant, or a pak choi plant, or a lettuce, or whatever plant, these small vegetables, and we'll put a little tag with your name, and that would be your plant. And and every day you'll attend to it, you'll take care of it. And as director, I could go look at the grow box, look at the plants, and I could look at the condition of a plant, and I can have a very good idea how well that client is doing. Because there's a unwritten rule, as it were, that if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of nobody or nothing. So conversely, if you could demonstrate that you can take care of someone else or take care of a plant or a pet, it will show, it will indicate that you have good insight into how you have the time and you have the inclination to take care of yourself as well. It is for the same reason in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you read the literature, you would see that whenever everything else failed to keep up an alcoholic sober, intensive work with other alcoholics never failed. In fact, one of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, his name was Bill W., and I think yesterday was his death anniversary. But when he started to stay sober, his doctor was Dr. Silkworth at Towns Hospital, and he was talking to people and trying to encourage them to stop drinking as he had done. And he was very, very unsuccessful at first, because he was telling them, why they should stop. And, it was intellectual, basically. And then he complained to Dr. Silkworth. He said, but I'm talking to so many people for the last 6 months, and nobody is interested in or want to stay sober. And then Dr. Silkworth said to him that, listen, but aren't you sober? And it was like an awakening. Yes. Well, it doesn't really, I mean, it did matter whether they listened or they stayed sober, but most important, you were staying sober and trying to help another person stay sober. You are not going to relapse yourself because you're setting up yourself as a model to that person. And I would like to, and it is also one of my reasons for my work on this program, because as a person in recovery, I know that in trying to help so many of my brothers and sisters to stay sober, I know God is going to protect me, and He has. I just celebrated 40 years of staying sober, and I know it is but for the grace of God. Now, there are urges that people in recovery would sometimes suffer. And if you have a strong motivation for recovery, these urges only last about 7 seconds, it is estimated. And there are a lot of things you can do, like there's the word halt, HALT. You avoid hunger, because most people, when they are hungry, that's the time they get the craving for cigarettes or alcohol. So if you keep your stomach full, it will mitigate the urges. You tend to have less cravings. Then you avoid anger. The A stands for anger. You avoid anger, because when you get angry, you lose your emotional balance. And that's also a time in the past, if you look at, you'll see that those were the times you would be tempted to go and take a drink or use drugs. And then loneliness. HAL, the L stands for loneliness. And most alcoholics and drug addicts, when they stop or they're trying to stop, they will become very lonely, because they are advised to stay away from people, places, and situations where the drug is available. And that leads to a kind of loneliness that could lead to self pity, where the person starts feeling sorry for themselves. Because human beings, we are gregarious, we are not used to being alone. So that this is again the reason why it is important to now belong to a support group, especially Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, because these will be people who are going through the same process, who have had some experience dealing with loneliness and craving and all those challenges that one could encounter in the initial stage of recovery. So you wouldn't find any better friends than those if you are a person in recovery. And again, as I said earlier on, you take numbers so that you can speak to them if you're getting the urge. So it is important to belong to a support group. Coming back again to the triggers, so some people, as I said, you start seeing them being reluctant to go to meetings. They start being dishonest again. They start telling lies. Now, alcoholism is a disease, and let me say this for our listeners. Um, Drinking is only a symptom of the disease. There are many other symptoms. In fact, some of these, a person could be an alcoholic and have these symptoms long before they start drinking. That is, one of the symptoms is poor coping skills. Another is low self-esteem, dishonesty, selfishness, self-centeredness, egotism. All of these are symptoms of the disease that is alcoholism and drug addiction. So that even though a person stopped drinking, they put down the glass, a lot of relatives might think, well, the problem is solved, you know, only to find a person still behaving as though when they were drinking. And I'm saying this to people in recovery as well. This is why you need to visibly show a change in your behavior, like starting to become responsible, taking responsibility at home, offering to help, doing things that you would have neglected to do before, keeping yourself neat and tidy again, bathing, you know, taking care of personal hygiene and all of that. people notice this. The people around you will notice these things and realize, hey, there's a change here. And it will take very little time for they to realize that the change is brought about because you stopped drinking and that you have really stopped drinking. And this is why in AA, the program is not really based so much on promotion, but on attraction. So can you imagine John John Brown, who was village alcoholic? People saw him drunk every day, sleeping under the shop, his clothes torn up and unkempt, and not cutting his hair and not bathing and all of that. And all of a sudden, you see John Brown, neat and had a haircut and well shaven and hands manicured properly and well dressed coming on. Everyone, he's without saying a word, just walking down the street. Every person who knew how he used to be and seeing him now is getting a message. It's like he's giving a lecture on a loudspeaker to say, look, what has happened, that I have changed. And they're surely going to inquire in small communities like I live. In no time, people will say, boy, look, John Brown, or you remember John Brown, how he used to drink? And I wonder what, is he going to church? They'll inquire, what has brought this change? And soon enough, they'll find out that he's going to the meetings in the school on a Sunday. And that is a very powerful message, a more powerful message than any other. We could put advertisements in the newspapers and say, look, if you have a drinking problem, you could call this number. And they have always been, even now as I speak, there are reference numbers, there are contact linkages and so on. The YouTube is full of information about alcoholism, like I have been posting as well. However, these things are not, I dare say, they're not as impacting as when someone you have known for all their life, you've seen how they transformed from a good young man, ambitious young man, into an alcoholic. You know of the troubles that they have caused for themselves and their family, probably the amount of times they got arrested for drunken driving or for violence and disturbance in the community and all of that. These things are never kept secret in a community. People know, and eventually you get labeled, for being bound to drunk or alcoholic, and you get all kinds of, not too complimentary names attached to you when people are making reference to you and so on. And now they are seeing you the same person. You start keeping yourself tidy, you're dressing neat and proper, you start working now. Next thing you're driving a car, or you have, like myself, I went back to school, graduated at university, and now is doing programs like this. Surely, for the people who knew me when I was drinking, know that change is possible. And this is what the attraction is about. So, going to meetings is very important for the alcoholic in recovery, seeking help, getting to know your triggers. The family members also need to understand what is happening with the person and how to be supportive. And to this extent, there's also groups for the family members like Al Anon and Alateen, where you learn how the personal drinking has affected you and how it has caused you to change, because all the dynamics in a family change when one person is an alcoholic or a drug addict. The whole relationships in that family change, because the person who is the alcoholic or drug addict becomes as though they are occupying center stage. Everybody is trying to either fix him, fix the problem, repair the damage, damage control after he has done something that brings the whole family into disrepute in the community, or finding ways to get rid of him. Let's find a place to put him, get him out of our sight. Or, he's a walking shame when he's walking on the road every day, because people know, well, look, he's Mr. So and so son. He was going to such a good school, college. He becomes the subject of conversation in the community. So all of this, when one person is drinking, they're not only affecting themselves, they're affecting their family, they're affecting their community. But so too, when they decide to recover and they decide to change, they can also make a big difference to themselves, their family initially, and their community as well. So the illness of alcoholism, as I said, is not just the taking the drink. This is why a person needs to get on some recovery program, because the same attitude and habits and behaviors that led to drug use in the first place, if they are not dealt with, they are eventually going to cause the person to relapse again. And this is why Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, these are lifelong programs. And they say no uncertain terms that once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. There's no cure for alcoholism, that a person who's an alcoholic will have to, if they wish to stay sober, continue to go meetings for the rest of their life. Some people balk at that because, they think, but how long is the rest of your life? You don't know. So just the same way a person stops drinking one day at a time, so too they treat with their recovery one day at a time. So you can decide, look, today I'm not going to take that drink. Today I'm going to avoid doing anything wrong. And if I get a chance to do one good thing for today, I'll do it. And that's a very, very simplified form of the AA program. Avoid doing anything wrong. If you get a chance to do anything good, you do it. And you're trying not to talk about it. That is, to inflate your ego about it. Because one of the chief reasons a lot of people drank and continue to drink and use drugs was because of their egotism. The ego is what really gets us into trouble emotionally a lot of times and psychologically as well. So for those people who are in recovery, I want to continue to encourage you to stay sober, go to your meetings. If you don't have a sponsor, you should try to get a sponsor. If it's your initial stage of recovery, get a temporary sponsor, but at some point, you should have a sponsor, that is a person you can speak with. Those people who have sponsors and who are in the program, of course, know that whenever anyone anywhere reaches out for help, you are responsible, because in trying to help another alcoholic or drug addict, you are helping yourself basically to stay sober and to continue to remain sober. And for our listeners out there, anyone, if you have a problem with alcohol or drugs, or you know someone who has a problem with alcohol or drugs, of course, you can reach me at 671-3040. That is 671-3040. And I'll be, but of course, you have to call me after the program. And as I said, all these programs that I'm doing are posted on YouTube under my name, Ramnaresh Dwarika. You can access these programs at your convenience, and you can listen to it at your own convenience and play, and you can also refer other people who might benefit from it. You can refer them to it so they can look at it and make that determination as to whether they have a problem, and if they do, what they can do about it. I know we are coming up on time, so I know a lot of people have asked whether they can, reach the program. Some people have. I want to apologize to those people who have said that they've been trying to reach the program to ask questions, and to let them know that they can call me after the program and we can deal with whatever questions they have. So I want to thank you all again. I want to thank Radio and TV Jagrati for hosting this program, giving the airtime as a public service. And as I said, if you have questions, you can reach me at 671-3040 after the program. Thank you very much.
All right, it's always a pleasure to have you in the program. And like Mr. Dwarka always said, help is readily available across the country. And of course, even at your fingertips. So until next Thursday, I am Jason Clue saying Sitaram for now.